And I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts, sizes, persuasions, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka SomeGadgetGuy, the SGG of this cluster of podcast where everything is melting down and falling apart, and it's lovely and hilarious. And yeah, we're doing it live. We're doing it live. And the QA, of course, stands for question and answers. I like to make this an interactive conversation. We get to sort out our feelings on the top tech news stories. We get to look back at the week behind us and spend a little time. It's not just, shouting out or yelling about the most clickbaity headlines. It's really digging a little bit deeper into that news, into those stories. And as you didn't hear in my original intro for this podcast, I want to start this right off by saying, for those of you of the United States persuasion, happy Labor Day. This is a holiday weekend, Monday, just to sort of celebrate the history of labor and collective bargaining and the rights and protections that employees have by giving us the day off. But one of the things that I like to talk about on these days, if it's a holiday, sometimes these can feel a little commercial or just, this is a day that, is just for greeting cards. My hope is any one of these days, you get a chance just to kind of take a second, think about some history, but more than anything else, I hope you're safe, I hope you're well fed, and I hope you get to spend some time with people who care about you. And so for a Monday morning holiday podcast, the relaxed fit pajama version of the SGGQA podcast, I want to spend some time with some good old nerdy, geeky people who are into tech and doing fun stuff, good times. So I'm already seeing crazy activity in this live chat. Some super chats already coming up from Aditya and Nil. Someone using it to tell me about my mic, which was off for the initial part of this broadcast. But folks, I really appreciate that support. I really appreciate that chatter. This is not going to be a common occurrence. I'm not permanently bringing the podcast back to the YouTubes. This was really just to give me a little laziness for my Monday morning show, being able to stream it and then not have to re-upload the capture after the fact. Of course, now it's already 10 minutes past into the show, and the initial start for this was kind of silly. So we've got a lot to talk about. Again, happy Labor Day. I hope you have some fun plans with family. The other warning, just before we jump into housekeeping, we survived the weekend with little interruption to our power. Out here in my neck of the woods in Southern California, we hit, I think, 120 degrees Fahrenheit on Saturday, with rolling blackouts kind of hitting the electrical grid throughout our state. So I'm hoping that I can keep this workstation and our air conditioning going during this broadcast. But again, where we started with a busted microphone, there's no guarantee that I'll finish this broadcast. So if this just suddenly cuts out on everyone, just to be warned, who knows? Who knows what could happen? Q3 Becker, I'm blaming the lawnmower guy. Actually, we've been doing pretty good with the leaf blowers. Again, I actually kind of hope they aren't working this week here. It got to 120 degrees on Saturday. So hopefully they're also keeping cool and staying safe. It's been pretty crazy. Yesterday, it wasn't as hot yesterday as it was on Saturday, but yesterday we had to keep raising the temperature on our air conditioning because it couldn't get down to what we had it set. So we started the day at like 74. It's early in the morning. We creeped it up to 77. Creeped it up to 79 at the peak of the afternoon, where you could actually feel heat radiating off the walls of our unit. We had it at 82, and it was still running constantly, and it couldn't get down to 82. So that was freaky. Yeah, that's proper freaky. Matt Tyler, 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That's around 47 degrees Celsius. I haven't done the math in my head. I think that's pretty close. It got hot, and it was super uncomfortable. I Mike Tech. Does California think it's Arizona? I mean, there's a terrible joke to be had in there, like, Arizona called, they want their heat wave back, but I bet you Arizona was probably even hotter. Yeah, it was pretty gross. So, just because it's a holiday weekend and people have schools and work off today, it doesn't mean that we don't have a ton of tech news to cover. Again, I hope you're staying safe. If you're in an area like our neck of the woods, I hope you're staying cool. And then I know the whole sheltering in place and social distancing has probably changed up your family and friend dynamic. But again, maybe today is a fun day to check out some online tools to play some board games, or maybe have that Tetris tournament with some cousins, or just to do something fun. So those of you who are here right now, I very much appreciate the fact that me and my podcast melting down, this is something that you think is a fun way to start your day or start your tech week. And I think we're going to have a good time. Let me get this out of the way. Rory, that's disgustingly hot. Truer words, man. It's pretty gross. We do have a bit of housekeeping to chew through. It was a kind of an odd week for me last week, getting some stuff done, and I've been backlogged on some major videos. And some stuff that we're going to be talking about in the second half of the podcast when we get to the gadget block, kind of influencing why I was pausing on some of this work, but catching back up. I mean, there's a lot that we need to cover. So I don't know. I saw an over-under on housekeeping for around 12 minutes. It's 9:14. 9:15. Okay, ready, go. Screen share. One of the things that I caught back up on last week was revisiting the Ghost Canyon Nook. Now, this is a monster little box. The Nooks are these little small form factor PCs built by Intel using laptop parts, but with better cooling. And the Ghost Canyon is their top of the line model, which can also have a dedicated GPU. And I thought I killed it. I thought I proper destroyed this Ghost Canyon Nook with a faulty GPU. I inherited it from another project. We were working on a little mini GTX 1070, and that went sizzle pop. And I thought the box was dead. So finally catching back up. I've had it for a couple months now. New GPU, running like butter. But I also have a couple concerns over the build. So whenever you build the PC, you have a certain kind of control over the parts and the case and the screws and how everything all fits together. And Intel has done something incredible in making a tiny little stupid, powerful mini workstation. But I am concerned about the longevity of that project. Full details in the video. Next up, one of my highest praises, like if I could give a phone the certified SomeGadgetGuy Gold Award or Platinum Award or Rare Earth Metal More Valuable Than Platinum Award, it would be to say that phone is worthy of a 1-year upgrade. By that I mean, let's say you had, a Pixel 3a and this new Pixel 4a came out. Is the Pixel 4a improved enough to warrant someone getting rid of their 3A? That's what I mean. That's the worthiness award, the worth it's for the money award, the 1-year upgrade. It is exceedingly rare that I feel a phone is so much improved from one generation to the next that I can comfortably say people who own the older phone, you will appreciate this experience enough to get rid of your current phone and upgrade to the next phone. But I always like to kind of try and compare, and it's getting really interesting trying to compare phones that are a little bit less expensive, right? I mean, we kind of crouch this value and worth itness for like the high end of the market, Note 20s and iPhone Pros and stuff like that. But increasingly, we also want to look at what are the buying habits and the behavior of consumers that are shopping more mid-range, because that's where the bulk of sales are happening. It's not iPhone 11 Pro, it's iPhone 11 and under. That's like the core demographic when we talk about consumer spending. Aditya Anil, the 1 year upgrade. That was not a stretch. I'm mad that I haven't made that into a button. I'm stealing that from you, and I'm gonna make that like an award that I'll actually send to manufacturers. I love it. The 1 year upgrade. Then there was a little activity on the Patreon. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because that's paywall stuff, but I did get out the Pixel 4a audio deep dive, so we can talk about the speaker and the headphone jack performance. A phone that kind of slipped through the cracks, and I felt bad about this. I waited a little too long to play with software updates on the TCL 10 Pro. And now we're getting into a whole bunch of second half of the year phones, and I really don't have the bandwidth to go back and produce a full video review for the camera deep dive on the TCL 10 Pro. But I've got a ton of samples. I shot the heck out of this phone, and I want to share some of those experiences, especially for a company that's been pretty public, talking about some of their issues in refining their camera. Or I should say cameras, because there are 4 crazy lenses on the back of the TCL 10 Pro. So I took my normal script and I cleaned it up a little bit, and I turned it into a text piece. So you can read through. I mean, this, if you can imagine what my voice sounds like, lens quality. There's certainly some sharpening, contrast, and structure being applied to finish photos, but we're starting off with a solid piece of glass in front of the sensor, even considering the normal 16 megapixel output. And we need a good lens to make use of that resolution. Center sharpness is nice and crisp. I don't think we'd be able to make up this kind of clarity through software alone. I mean, so, it's my writing style and how I voice things, and all of the same categories that I normally show off in my video deep dive camera reviews with links to camera samples and video samples. I couldn't finish a video and then flip immediately back into the current project. So I feel terrible. That was a phone it's a phone I'm still excited about. I think it's a really special offering from TCL. I just couldn't finish it. So that's also kind of teasing some of the content that's going to be coming out this next week, as I've got a finished video for a phone that's going to have another camera deep dive on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. And that's going to wrap us up for housekeeping. Actually, I had 2 other things. We're going to save them. I might use them for some other kind of commentary, but I'm going to take a quick... Oh, MBK98. I miss the creepy tunnel, too. What I need to do, I'm planning like a pilgrimage to the creepy tunnel where I'm going to take like 10 phones. And hopefully no one's living in the creepy tunnel when I go. So I can take like a bunch of comparison shots and then do maybe like a photo retrospective of the years I've spent shooting the creepy tunnel. I want to say it was the LG G2. I believe the G2 might have been the first appearance of the creepy tunnel in one of my camera videos. Team Vry saying hi, Juan. Fat Produce saying greetings, Earthlings. And We Brew Lover 5923. Do you have any thoughts about the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II? I do. We're going to talk about that in the second half when we get to the gadget block. We always start off with a little news and politics, and then we'll catch back there. And Tobez, we're definitely talking MediaTek when we are going to talk about one of the major phone announcements that hit T-Mobile. Team Vry, we need a creepy tunnel short film shot on mobile. So I have an idea for a short film of some guy who's being chased by sort of a nondescript monster-like entity. And the creepy tunnel creeps me out so much that the final showdown, the final confrontation would take place, him trying to escape this amorphous monster by running into the creepy tunnel and then not making it. Spoilers! I'm probably never going to make this movie. But I have actually talked to a buddy of mine who does post-production work, and like, this could be kind of a fun project. I'm not sure how I could pull it off, because the few times that we've had the ability to maybe shoot it, people have been living in the creepy tunnel. And I don't think I can be that guy who like pulls the permits and gets, like a fire safety officer on set and then has to call cops to like kick people out and then cleaning crews to go in and wipe out all of the stuff that's in there. It, it it's too much for me, but I have actually written a short film and I did. And it's hilarious that you say and shoot it on mobile. The project would have been, can I finish this film on like a Sony Xperia, this short film. So that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. All right, moving right along. We have quite a bit of news to jump through. I'm going to try and run through news because there's one major news story that I really want to spend some time on because it's a woman doing some amazing videos on YouTube that cover some of the topics that we've been talking about related to media literacy, like how best to kind of protect communities, how best to educate consumers, and then also to talk about how we're being manipulated by content. And she makes really engaging stuff, and it's a voice that you wouldn't expect talking about tech. So that's really, I think, what I want to make the focus of the news block this week. But we've got a couple sort of funnier and more interesting videos to catch up on. Let me get this out of the way here. Well, to start off, this isn't funny, but we've been following this conversation for a while, and Ars Technica. Oh, and I should mention all of the links, all of the stories, all of the housekeeping that we're talking about, they'll be in the show notes, which you can find on my website, SomeGadgetGuy.com. This is a story that we've been covering, I think, basically since I've started my podcast, is the digital divide. We can't get an accurate idea of how many Americans lack some kind of connectivity, that they just literally don't have access to some form of broadband internet. And a couple months back, we talked about Ajit Pai testifying and commenting on the estimated number while trying to make it sound like repealing net neutrality made it so much easier for us to reach all of these new Americans, and net neutrality was standing in the way of us rolling out more broadband to people. And apparently, not only was that probably not true when he said it, we've got better data to suggest that he even knew that this was inaccurate information. So this is written up by John Brodkin. I'm not going to go through this whole article. It's, again, Ars Technica has been doing a phenomenal job of following up. Again, it's not just we've got one headline about net neutrality or one headline about broadband. This is a continuing conversation because the very person who's at the head of the FCC, the chairman, is often found to be at least citing inaccurate information, if not directly behind, conflating information on what benefits consumers and how we should protect content and distribution. So not to spoil what this article goes through, this is a phenomenal accounting of the current situation that we find ourselves, especially for how poor this current situation is. Right now in the United States, to qualify for broadband, you just need to be able to generate some form of data connection near 25 megabits down and 3 megabits up. Now, I don't know about you. My daughter is doing distance classes to start kindergarten, and it kind of breaks my heart that this savvy, social, outgoing, gregarious little girl can't interact with other kids her age. The whole notion of trying to interact with kids and teachers through a web browser is kind of being lost on an almost 5-year-old. We've got okay upload speeds, and we face connection issues on the regular. Can you imagine trying to participate in sheltering in place social distancing at the FCC mandated minimum of 3 megabits per second uploads, knowing that you are not guaranteed to sustain 3 megabit uploads? And it's not good. It's a bad look for basically what's the future of our economy and education and healthcare. Like, if you weren't connected, you're irrelevant to the future, and it's tough to really kind of work all this out. I've been fortunate that I have reasonable connectivity. I can host this upstream, even though I can't always keep my microphone working. And my wife and my daughter are watching a movie right now, and it's streaming down. So we at least have that much bandwidth to be able to reliably do both. I've got a number of comments on people commenting on AJPie that I can't repeat and keep my podcast PG to PG-13. Again, for being PG-13, I try and save my naughty words for at least one good outburst, maybe once a month. So it's pretty good. All right, moving right along. Now, this was one of the crazy stories that I think hit. And I can't say I've been a huge fan of this form of entertainment for a while. Obviously, when I was a little kid, it was all about WWF. Fight me, but Jake the Snake is my jam. Knock a dude out and then, like, put a snake on him. Whoa, blew my mind. And I did kind of dabble back in during the NWO days, Hulk Hogan wearing all black. I don't know, something about that got me. I came back more than anything else, just like, Undertaker and okay. So very, very distantly still kind of watching or keeping track of what might be happening in professional wrestling, basically soap operas for dudes. And they totally get me. So I always think it's interesting when we've got a labor dispute. And Simon says, Hypno, NWO for life. Oh, real quick, I do want to circle back to this. Team Vry. And this is a situation that I think we're facing all over the world. But this is a great comment. Juan, my mom's a college professor in the Philippines. And part of their challenges right now are trying to get kids who live in far-flung villages connected to distance learning classes. And especially when we look at those differences in infrastructure and we start talking about satellite internet solutions, the potential for maybe more terrestrial cell phone style connections to bridge some of those gaps, I think it's going to put an interesting crimp. It's going to be a difficult challenge for traditional institutions to keep up with these types of remote learning and distance learning initiatives. The perceived financial value of getting some kind of certificate or degree through online classes versus showing up to lecture halls for substantially more of an investment, especially as future generations are probably going to get hit even harder with bills for secondary and collegiate education. Sorry, back to the WWE. I don't understand how this can be legal. This is coming from WrestlingIncorporated.com, Wrestling Inc. By the way, this is the first appearance of Wrestling Inc. on the Some Gadget Guy podcast. They don't cover a lot of tech news, so, I don't know that we'll ever see this blog on my podcast ever again. Vince McMahon threatens to punish talent engaging with third parties, written up by Raj Giri. Vince McMahon issued an edict this past week that talent can no longer, quote, engage with outside third parties, end quote, which would presumably include platforms like Cameo and Twitch. WWE held a call with talent last Sunday regarding the reinvention of the product. During the call, it said that WWE owns the real names of talent, not just their character names. So WWE engages in a relationship with wrestlers that is very much sort of like an independent contractor type of agreement. But when your character's likeness is under a specific kind of contract, I actually feel like there's probably some issues in state law. Like here in California, we recently passed laws that are supposed to help empower Uber and Lyft drivers, gig economy workers. But they've actually thrown a lot of traditional production into sort of an unknown gray area. When I write contracts or when I sign contracts, there are now a whole number of other guidelines and issues with me as an independent contractor doing work for another entity. I don't understand how this can be legal, because it's not just some crazy wrestler persona. Vince McMahon is now saying wrestlers as themselves, as corporeal people, so long as they're doing business with the WWE, can no longer engage in anything third party from the WWE platform. So I expect some kind of lawsuit shortly. West Easton on Facebook. So they're going to compensate for possible earnings then, right? Oh no. Oh no. The whole situation here is you're on the hook for WWE's contract. You're getting paid what you were contracted to be paid, and then you're not allowed to make any kind of secondary income or even participate on platforms which might which might conflict, I guess, with the WWE's mentioning. It's pretty crazy, Wes, right? Team Fry, Vince needs to rethink a lot of their company policies, in my opinion. I think he's thought about them. I think this is probably him rethinking his policies so that he can try and extract more wealth and more value from the people that actually provide the entertainment and the product. He's providing a platform, I guess. That could be the argument. But if you're not making them proper employees, then I don't see how you can dictate what their outside activities might be off of your platform. So that's pretty rough. Yolanda, Yolanda Rowe, has he time traveled back to the old South? That's dirty. Again, I'm not going to make comments about Vince McMahon and his potential stance on owning people, but it's not the best look. I feel again, I feel like there is an easy challenge here if even a couple people decide that they want to test this assertion of his in a court of law. And actually, Sheikh Mohammed brings up a great point. Brock Lesnar signed with the AEW. So I feel like there's a camaraderie with, say, combat sports personalities, not personalities. Someone please help me with the terminology here, because we're going to be moving on to a story about the UFC. And while I'm a very casual fan of boxing and mixed martial arts, I don't know this lingo. Like, I don't live in these worlds, but I feel like there's like a camaraderie between high athleticism, combat sports inspired individuals. We can see like a Ronda Rousey going to professional wrestling after sort of, fading from her MMA career. What would the landscape look like if a whole bunch of retired UFC fighters decided to take up with smaller entities? You'd have some high-profile individuals who earned huge reputations from being in, MMA, and then would deliver a ton of value to a smaller organization looking at something in professional wrestling. And I don't know about you guys, but like, if I had built my reputation by getting kicked in the head for real, it might be kind of nice, while I'm still in good shape, to sort of calm that down a bit. I mean, not to say that professional wrestling isn't high impact, but it's not direct real kicks to the head with the intent of trying to knock someone out for reals. It's a different kind of high athleticism. But that's why I feel like there's that camaraderie today where there could be a second career from MMA into professional wrestling. Yeah, persona. So, I mean, like Gary the Fireman, Wes Easton, Yolanda Rowe. Like, I don't feel comfortable calling an MMA fighter a persona, even though it's probably accurate, right? Combatant? I don't know what the word is. So again, something something will probably challenge Vince McMahon's stance here. I hope it's a free market. It's a double whammy. People who have signed contracts in the WWE may be doing some kind of class action or some type of regulatory insight as to how Vince McMahon does business. I'm sure he'd love to have people digging into his books. And then the flip side, it would be competition from other organizations. Gary the Fireman. Apparently, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins owns a wrestling organization too. So, it would be nice. We Brew Lover 5923. Ain't that a kick in the head? Get it? Get it? I too am a fan of Dean Martin. So, moving right along. This one's real quick because they flipped it on and they flipped it right back off again. I think gamers are gonna have to reconcile that games cost more than they think they do. And by that, I mean alternative methods of monetization are going to increasingly be a factor in how we play, digital entertainment. So let me click this on here. This was covered pretty widely, but I caught it first on pushsquare.com. EA disables UFC4's in-game ads following player outrage, and they won't appear in the future. This is written up by Robert Ramsey. Now, I'm really just going to cover the update because EA dumped in a bunch of ads and then, update, after backlash from fans, Electronic Arts has disabled the in-game ads that play in between rounds in EA Sports UFC4. In a statement handed to Eurogamer and posted on Reddit, the publisher said, quote, earlier this week, the team turned on ad placements in EA Sports UFC4 that appeared during the replay moments in gameplay. This type of advertising inventory is not new to the UFC franchise, though we have typically reserved displaying ads to specific main menu tiles or octagon logo placement. It is abundantly clear from your feedback that integrating ads into the replay and overlay experience is not welcome. The advertisements have been disabled by the team, and we apologize for any disruption to gameplay that players may have experienced. The statement continues, we realize that this should have been communicated with players ahead of time, and that's on us. We want to make sure our players have the best possible experience playing EA Sports UFC4, so ad integration in the replay and overlay experience will not appear in the future. Thank you for your continued feedback on EA Sports UFC4. So this was a bad look. I understand what EA's trying to say. Totally normal. You're watching a UFC fight, and in between replay moments, an ad's going to pop up or some kind of overlay or lower third or ticker or something. But EA also does this to themselves. So UFC4 went out to reviewers with none of this stuff enabled. And so they purposely waited until roughly a month after the game had been out, garnering positive reviews, selling fairly well, and then they kicked on the secondary monetization scheme. Again, words are failing me today. It's going to be one of those days. I don't know that there's any prep. This would have been something communicated in a review. Oh, hey, and yeah, as I'm watching the replay, man, I got like a Red Bull ad, kind of interrupting my replay moments. Isn't that kind of annoying? Yeah, it's totally realistic, EA, but that's not what we like about video games, is that kind of commercialized realism. So I'm glad that they walked this back. But what we see here is the continued conversation and moving of goalposts. Modern games don't really profit like they used to. And by that, I mean, you can sell a ton, you can make a bunch of money. The games industry has never been bigger, right? Especially during shelter in place, we're seeing record sales on video gaming hardware and software licensing. This stuff is blowing up huge. But we've now sort of been riding that microtransaction train. And when mega corporations are reporting to shareholders, they need to find ways of continuing to add value long-term to purchasing. Microtransactions were eclipsing game sales as profit generators. And so when we start pushing back against things like, loot boxes and gambling mechanics in video games, we're going to see a lot more stuff like this. We're going to see a lot more creative inclusion of value-added monetization for the company making the game. The profit that they make off of charging $60 for a AAA title now isn't going to cover the desire for improved financials quarter over quarter as they report to the people who have invested in their companies. Dave Burns, they added the ads post-launch. That's what's really ticking people off. Is I think if they had just been upfront, they probably could have refined this mechanic. Again, it's crappy. No one wants to be fed commercials on a commercial product that they paid for. It's a $60 game. But they could have incorporated this, I think, in a better way. And then also maybe mixed it up. Like, how great would it be if there were also sort of fictional ads mixed in with real ads to kind of make this all feel like, sort of hyper real? This could have worked. And it could have worked in a way where they also, if they had gotten out in front of it, talked about how we're not going to make this a platform for pay-to-win mechanics or gambling mechanics. So what we're doing is we're working with the real companies that actually advertise with the UFC. These are really great partnerships. We think that this message is going to appeal to UFC fans. And we're making this core. We're making this, from the very beginning, a UFC experience. I think that could have worked. But they tried to be sneaky, and then it blew up in their face. And I don't think anyone's sad. I don't think anyone's bothered by that. Oh, Simon says, Hypno, normally they start fixing the game after a month. From Nick Fell, games are just getting expensive to make, which is very true. They've never been more profitable, but I think the risks involved, especially you look at UFC, you have to license the UFC and then make a good game. Your upfront costs are pretty hardcore. Wes Easton, I would love to see a Slurm ad in a game like this. Like, how hilarious would that be? Again, I think like there's room, like you can do interesting things, and just because something's a commercial doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. There are so many cultural moments in how commercials can kind of shape a conversation that could be really interesting. So if you combine these ideas really well and you're upfront with what you're trying to accomplish, I think this would have gone over a lot better. From Trey916, exactly what I'm talking about. The advertising in NBA 2K is realistic. Here's tonight's Kia play of the game or whatever. It's not a full-blown commercial. And the mentioning, just like you would see on a sports broadcast, doesn't take you out of the replay moments or the gameplay moments. We look at sports broadcasts and we're sort of inundated. As our TVs have gotten larger, more ad space is sort of all around like our broadcast. You could do that in a game too, and I think you could do that really well. And from Matt Tyler, paying for half a game is the issue, then having to buy stuff in-game to unlock the rest. If we can avoid mechanics like that, where the game is purposely broken and that you have to either grind for an unreasonable length of time or pay to shortcut the unlock, then I feel like that's a better strategy. Moving right along. Let me get this next story queued up here. I'm not going to go too deep into this because this is another really interesting write-up. This is coming directly from the Microsoft blog. We've been talking in the past about media literacy and how scary it's gotten. I just whistled on scary. How scary it's gotten with this new generation, the arms race that we're going to see in peddling misinformation. At the very beginning of Shelter in Place, we were still talking about stories of people attacking 5G towers and the spread of bad information on social media. And one of the things that's really going to complicate that is how scary good deepfake technology has gotten. Taking an image of someone's face and putting it on another body and making them say or do things that person never really did. This is going to be a crazy battle over the next several years as we try and figure out better ways of detecting it. And then the people who do this get better at producing it. So Microsoft detailed an initiative that they've been working on to give confidence scores based on the current tech level of deepfakes. And this write-up is pretty impressive. So again, I'm going to save this. I really want folks to just give this a quick browse, skim it, read through it. They've got excellent links to other organizations and the partnerships that they're going to be working on and the universities that they've been working with to develop some of these technologies. It's really critical that we at least keep this on our radar. Whether or not we're all going to become experts in video detection and deepfake detection, no. But we at least need to be aware, because this is going to be another phase where we all know, if you're watching a podcast like mine or you're listening to a podcast like mine, we're going to run into those family members on Facebook that are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Obama said this. And then we pull up the video and it's going to be like, cringe TikTok quality deepfaking. And we're going to be the ones on the front line trying to correct that misinformation, that spread of bad info. And it takes 20 times more work to fix the record after someone has spread a bad idea. Again, what we've been talking about, media literacy, consumer education, and the impact that these social media and web tools have on discourse is profound. So we should at least know what's going on out there. And if Microsoft can give us a better tool, we should at least keep an eye on it. It'll get circumvented. Someone will come up with a better deepfake. And the game's going to continue for a while. It's going to get pretty gross out there. So get this out of the way here. We Brew Lover 5923. It looks good, but how do we know that a deepfake won't go through the filter? That's the question. It will. Oh, that's the truth of this conversation. As soon as Microsoft details what tools they use to detect this, someone's going to make a better deepfake that can skirt by the confidence checking of this tool, which means we make a new detector, which means they make a better deepfake, which means we make another detector, which means they make a better deepfake. It's this right now. We're at the very beginning. So if we can't get ahead of this conversation now, it's going to be so much harder to dispel bad information when deepfakes start getting better and better and better to try and avoid detection. That's why we just need to be aware. It's not be vigilant, but yeah, kind of actually be vigilant. All right. I'm going to stretch here real quick because getting... Matt Tyler. No, actually, someone please do this. I would love this. Someone deepfake Juan's face onto TK because I want that beard. Someone needs to take my face off, put it on TK's, but keep the beard. Because I'm getting real fuzzy right now. I'm gonna have to whack all this off. I just can't. I can't have scraggly beard, and I can't get past this point. I've got this kind of Castilian, I can't even do a Van Dyke. I can't get my mustache to connect to my beard. There's always going to be this little gap. So I can't grow the real regal beard shape that I want. So if someone can cheat for me and deep fake TK's beard on my face or my face on TK's head, I'm for it. Do it. Let's do it. I love it. From Yolanda Rowe, despite our best efforts, disinformation never really goes away. It's like all those old chain letters that were new to every family who got on AOL back in the day. Someone literally just sent me today a password protected Excel file from an email address that has no return. And that's still a scam. That still works. Oh, let me just click on this random Excel file and put in this password. And I'm sure it won't run an executable and infect my computer with a virus. We're still fighting that kind of common sense cyber attack. Our family and friends, they are not prepared for a future where they literally cannot trust that someone said what they really said or that someone didn't say what a bad actor made them say with the deepfake. It's gonna get crazy. So let me get this out of the way here. And I want to wrap up the news block. This is one of my all-time favorite YouTube channels, and I don't feel she gets nearly the recognition or the attention that she deserves. I've brought her up on the podcast before, but like I might just have to make her a regular feature. And I want to reach out. I feel like she has added so much value to the overall YouTube conversation beyond what her niche would make you think that she's all about. So let me take just a quick sip of water here. And apologies, my voice probably will fuzz out by the end of this podcast. I am, of course, talking about one Ann Reardon on the YouTube channel How to Cook That. Now, this would not normally, a cooking channel would not normally be fodder for a tech podcast. But one of the things that she's really taken it upon herself is not just producing cooking tutorials or tips and tricks for like how to better ice a cake or do fun things. Her channel has become an incredible resource. I am not being hyperbolic. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not being silly. Her channel has become an amazing resource for untangling the current YouTube algorithm, how media entities are manipulating the YouTube algorithms, and how low effort farmed content is kind of destroying the YouTube experience. So she started by doing these debunking videos. Like you've seen those little GIFs on Reddit, like, oh, tasty, and you can make this thing, and oh, what a fun, clever food hack. You use an iron in tinfoil, and now you have a grilled cheese. We've seen these so often, like we don't really critically examine them. But every time now I see a square GIF of some kind of food being prepared, because of Ann Reardon, you actually look at the recipe, and most of the time it wouldn't work. Like rationally, beyond just like, oh, well, that was just a satisfying little snippet of internet video or giffery. You go through and you're like, oh, but no, this was all BS. Like, it's just fake. And it's kind of like if you were really into reality TV and then you saw how reality TV was produced and none of it's real. Some people still like how reality TV is structured, but it takes away some of the fun when you realize like, oh, this is garbage. This was all manipulated, written, produced, directed, and edited as any other fictional drama, just the actors are way worse. Even, like reality competition shows. Like I have a hard time when you see a cutaway and you see an obviously manipulated person trying to be coached into delivering a line one specific way. Like that's not real. And so Ann Reardon's channel, How to Cook That, I have to give it the highest recommendation that you go and subscribe. Whether or not you really care about cooking videos, her work at debunking content rises to the level and maybe beyond Mythbusters. It is that good. So when she does a debunking video, it's not just, oh, well, I saw they put Coke bottles in a watermelon. No, I don't think that would work. She really does it. And that content is, like I said, it takes 20 times more effort to undo the damage of misinformation than spreading it in the first place. So these debunking videos take phenomenally more effort to produce than what they're debunking, because we have these content farms that just churn this information out relentlessly. So for her to make one video takes her a week of testing out these recipes, testing out these claims, looking at these, these content farmed videos, and then really trying them. She can't rise. I mean, so this most recent one, it was published on the 4th. It was published 3 days ago. 1.5 million views. That's a lot of views. Like, I'm not saying like she's so underwatched or underrepresented. Like her channel does well, but she is debunking recipes in this most recent video from content farms that generate over 200 million views a month. So her video is less than 1% of the viewership that she's trying to debunk. Now, one of the reasons why I'm really focused on Ann Reardon and why I'm talking her up as aggressively as I am here is in her more recent videos, beyond just debunking the recipes themselves, she has been doing investigative reporter grade analysis of the channels that make these videos. So in these debunking viral videos here, they're all coming from one specific content farm. Now, I don't want to spoil too much of her video, but I'm going to try and pull up a little screen share here. Again, I don't want to play too much of this too because, again, you get kind of wrecked for content ID. But this isn't one channel that makes a couple little recipe videos. This is a media organization. Sometimes they're based out of Russia. Sometimes I think this one was based out of the Philippines or Vietnam. I can't remember. I watched the video twice and I'm spacing on it. But this media organization owns over 100 channels, and each of those channels cross-links to every other channel. So when they start a new channel, it immediately gets a bump by the YouTube algorithm because it's collaborating with these other channels that have over 1 million subscribers. And so one of the channels that they have on their main sort of corporate entity, one of the videos that they have on their main corporate entity site is them unboxing dozens of YouTube Gold Awards. You get a YouTube Gold play button when you break 1 million subscribers. And they're unboxing dozens of them. And these channels have been started up, over the last 6 months. She posts one of their very first videos, and in 5 months, the very first video broke 900,000 views. What video creator do you know of in their very first video can break 900,000 views on the very first video? That doesn't exist. That's not real. But then they all just cross-post each other's little snippets of fake recipes. And then this little recipe shows up in a compilation video on this channel, and it links back to that channel. And then this channel can then promote this, and then it links back to that other channel. Hundreds of these channels generating billions of views, and it's all fake. And none of it's real. And so then you look at people who used to host real cooking discussions, real editorial restaurant reviews that would actually put the time and the effort and the energy into making this stuff, and they've all basically been wiped out. Like, they've all been pushed off platform because the overriding trend, if you say, hey, I'm going to host a channel about food or a channel about cooking, Ann Reardon still does well, 1.5 million. No one would scoff at a video 3 days old with 1.5 million views on it. But she's going up against fake content farms that can all completely game the system and generate 200 times the amount of traffic that she can put together with one well-researched and one well-cobbled together, insightful video. And that's the situation we face across all of YouTube. Now, for all of the arguments that I've gotten into with people, last week we talked about, I wrote an editorial about the Surface Duo and how Microsoft is really playing the PR game in a way that is way savvier than we've ever seen Microsoft play it before. But that really bristled a lot of people. A bunch of larger tech YouTubers got very frustrated by the commentary and the conversation that was generated from that editorial. But I also feel like if we're not self-aware, if we're not looking at what actually is happening, I got into a conversation with someone on Patreon. It's like, hey, Juan, you're only reviewing these B-team phones. And you're like, what's a B-team phone? What's a lesser than phone? Like, just because I'm not making every video about Samsung or Apple, now suddenly we've got like C-list celebrity phones. Like, what's going on here? We're purposely spreading and manipulating content in a way that satisfies the YouTube algorithm. And if you look at Ann Reardon's investigative work, mega media operatives in foreign countries, some of them amicable with the United States and the EU, some of them less amicable with the United States and the EU, are manipulating what YouTube says is their policy and can show you. Here's a YouTube channel with dozens of the same thumbnails. According to YouTube's terms of service, that's against their policy. You should not be allowed to just repeat thumbnails. And your thumbnails can't be for real bait and switch. We all love clickbaity, shocked face thumbnails. Every time I upload a video, YouTube always picks the absolute worst images of my face as the only options that I should use for my thumbnails. That's why I purposely try to almost never use my face in a YouTube thumbnail. It's because I'm angry at YouTube. But here are huge content farms that do that on the regular. Like, well, here's a photo of someone cutting a heart-shaped cake. Nowhere in that video does that heart-shaped cake get cut up. But YouTube's terms of service say that that's against the rules. But here are channels getting dozens of gold play buttons. So it's not even like that. Supposedly you need to be like verified, and then YouTube will look at your channel and see if you're really playing by the rules. And that's not real either. Apparently it's automated to a certain point, and YouTube is going to make way too much money on the advertising revenue of a content farm than someone like Ann Reardon or someone like a mid-level tech reviewer. You know, so if I don't pack every video with the right keywords, then my channel metrics go down and my channel's punished. I'm not shared as often and I'm not suggested as often. And YouTube really takes a hammering to me. Yeah, I have a financial incentive to only talk about the most popular content on this platform. If we're not self-aware of this, then our entire industry, our hobby, our lifestyle, those of us who really love tech, this all falls apart because it's all fake. So, with the highest recommendation, maybe even before you're done watching this podcast or listening to this stream, exposing 8 viral video tricks that will blow your mind. She's even playing the clickbaity game to show you in her title like what it is that she's talking about. Ann Reardon is an absolute gift to the YouTube community. She needs to be shared far and wide because this Facebook, YouTube style algorithmic manipulation of our content is bad for everyone. It's bad for consumers. It's bad for producers. And ultimately, I think it's going to prove bad for the companies that really play into how this media benefits them currently at the expense of everybody else. Matt Tyler, Pornhub is the place to upload tech videos. I would love to see MindGeek deliver a competing video platform, but no one wants this business right now. No one. It is way too much of a mess. From We Brew Lover 5923, really, it's either people who are misguided or people who just want to make money off of not caring about health and safety. I mean, yeah, when you watch these like crafty videos and these cooking videos, a lot of them can be dangerous. Like, it's not, there's no verification, but it's the whole repetition and she even gets into, again, I don't want to ruin this video, but she gets into like the psychology of this too. Like why clickbaity headlines work the way they do and why there's sort of an unsatisfied mechanic in seeing a thumbnail of one recipe and then that recipe not actually being in the video creates a desire mechanic that causes you to click on the next video. And it keeps you in a chain of staying on platform, and YouTube as an algorithm, not as the people who like, you know, sort of speak for YouTube or the creator team on Twitter, or like human beings that actually work at YouTube, who I kind of feel like the algorithm has gotten out of their control. When you're looking at YouTube as an algorithmically manipulated content distribution platform, YouTube loves that cycle. Don't deliver, delay. They clicked on this, they want that dopamine hit. They clicked on this, they want that dopamine hit, but don't give it to them. make them click into the next video. Keep them on the platform as long as you can. And that's what YouTube and Facebook have designed their software to accomplish. And I believe, it is my assertion, that it creates one of the unhealthiest relationships we can have with social media. As soon as I see that I am not in control of the content I subscribe to, it vastly diminishes my desire to play with that platform. From Eric, Engadget just posted that EA has removed the ads in-game of UFC4. I mean, that's what we talked about. That was actually, I mean, we shared EA's press release. So I'm glad Engadget could catch up to the SGGQA podcast. Yolanda Rowe, there's one channel that repeatedly has a thumbnail for a hack that never actually reveals the hack. That channel and its cousins were blocked ages ago. She talks about that too, because we've all seen that image of like a toothbrush and toothpaste with a busted phone screen. And like, that's not real, but it shows up over and over and over. And again, according to YouTube's terms of service, that should not be allowed. But if you're a humongous content farm with over 100 gold play button awards, well, you get different rules on YouTube for what content you can mislead consumers with. I'll tell you right now, I'll be very surprised if this podcast or this live stream survives on YouTube. It'll be fine on Twitch. I don't know if I'll be able to keep it on YouTube. So, here, why don't we take a break? We're done with news. I'm on schedule considering I went the first 9 minutes of this stream with a non-functional mic. So I want to give a special shout out. We had an amazing week on the subreddit. This was our highest week of growth for picking up new members. This was the week that we had the highest number of submissions, people submitting new content. And we had a couple really highly upvoted stories, and also shared on Twitter and on other social media platforms. So if you're not hip or if you're not savvy, every podcast has a subreddit. You know, Reddit is just a place to kind of help, augment your podcast or your show or something like that. And my podcast is no different. But my subreddit is dedicated to trying to deliver a platform that can help content creators promote and grow and find an audience that's interested in sharing what they have to make. Major subreddits, you don't have any problems finding the biggest news publications or the biggest YouTube content creators. Like, they just get shared on their own. But if you go and you try and share your own stuff, if you're just starting out, well, we've got rules against self-promotion. We can't have that. Oh, you want to share something you've made? Well, no, because we have rules against that. But we'll happily publish every press release from every manufacturer, because that's not the same as self-promotion. So if you go to reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles, you're going to find a tiny but growing community of people that are all trying to spread the good word on content that they think deserves more attention. So these are the top stories on reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Number 1, with a bullet, #TKMyBay. Microsoft Surface Duo phone, quick hands-on and initial first impressions, braving the elements, risking life and limb to go out to a Best Buy. TK shot one of the better hands-on videos for the Surface Duo now that it's out in retail and they can still, kind of lock down content creators. Again, Microsoft played this brilliantly. I would expect between today and the 10th that the embargo on full reviews will lift. And then we're going to see the second phase of Surface Duo videos. But why wait when my buddy TK has one of the better first looks at actually using the software on the phone, as he took a demo unit for a test drive around a Best Buy? I am too nervous to spend much time in a public place like like a Best Buy. So I very much appreciate that TK took the hit for us. He absolutely deserves your traffic and your attention. So go and check him out. Number 2, we've got an editorial video, Who is the Galaxy Z Fold Meant For, posted by Johannes Sensei. And then, I thought I upvoted this. Here, let's give that an upvote. Apple iPad Pro Genuine Leather Case by Casemade coming in at number 3 from Mr. H Tech with 290 subscribers. Number 3 spot came from someone who is yet to break 300 subscribers on YouTube. Rounding out, we've got an Xperia L4 unboxing from Team Vry. I don't know if Vry's still in the live chat, but you made the top 5 on glowing rectangles. Not only did you make the top 5, you beat Jerry Rig Everything's examination of the Galaxy Note 20. So that's pretty good. You know, Team Vry, 700 subscribers. Jerry Rig Everything, 6 million. And Zach, I should say. Zach coming in at number 5 behind 2 content creators that have yet to break 1,000 combined. So this is what I love about this community. Our conversation is so much broader and so much more diverse than every single rumor and leak about Sam Apple. We've got LFA Reviews coming in with some awesome earbud comparisons. We've got a video of mine from 8 years ago looking at the Lumia 900 camera. We've got Mr. Tech Rant saying no more Pro iPhones, and he's not going to be buying premium phones anymore. Pixel 4a versus Pixel 3a. Spending some time with the LG G8X. Steve Litchfield looking at the, the OnePlus Nord. My Ghost Canyon review. And Josh Vergara looking at the Pixel 4a. This is proving to be... this was the other one that I wanted to point out too. This is number 11. So just outside the top 10, T. Frank with 3,800 subscribers, doing a long-term follow-up on the Canon M50 camera. This kind of stuff is invaluable. Again, I can't say enough cool things about someone who is taking the time to look back at a product and see how it aged. I'm publishing a video tomorrow. I'm getting rid of my iPhone XS. I really don't see any reason to keep it. You know, I run this stupid collection of old phones. Like I've got an Android and Windows phone and BlackBerry museum over in my bookcase over there, and it's ridiculous. I'm really trying to find ways of getting rid of more of these things in the most responsible and ethical way that I can. But iPhone XS really kind of became the middle child, the ignored middle child of the current iPhone lineup. I'm very disappointed in spending $1,000 on that phone. But going back 2 years later, we don't have tech commentary really doing good postmortems. It's not timely. The YouTube algorithm isn't looking for iPhone XS videos. Consumer search is down for that product. So as soon as I put this video out publicly, I'm very confident it's not going to do very well. Still took me a lot of time to make it. Still had to follow up on my experiences and write a script and shoot video and shoot pretty B-roll and edit it all together. And that video's gonna get crushed. It's not going to do well. It is so much more important these days when you see someone who's really going back to verify what was the experience after the initial review. That's critical content. If we don't go back and look, like, were all those early reviews accurate? Or were they all just, hey, it's the next new shiny. You're gonna buy it because it's popular. Isn't that great? If we don't go back and verify this stuff, then all of this is garbage content. You know, like the initial assessment from someone who's had the phone for embargo week is not a review, but that gets to be the final word on a product that a consumer might have for 2 to 4 years. And that's not okay. So huge respect. T. Frank, 3,800 subscribers. We should follow up on the Canon M50. How did that camera do over 2 years of incredible mirrorless camera competition? That's a conversation worth having. So, Team Bride, thanks for the shout out, Juan. Much appreciated. Your video performed well on the subreddit, man. Keep it up. Again, we want that good work. We want that diversity. We want to have a broader conversation. And then also we want to have a place where we can help share and promote. So, you know, most of the channels here aren't the same kind of regular fodder that you see on the top big subreddits. They're just building their audiences. Maybe some of them haven't even hit monetization. Reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. If you've not been before, I guarantee you're going to find some new content creators that you've never seen before that you will subscribe to and that you're going to dig what they have to say. And I have to say, Matt Tyler, for someone who's always talking about trying to downvote my videos, was a real sweetheart in posting my Lumia 900 camera examination. It was pretty funny. Like, again, the top thing from me was a video I did 8 years ago. Now, the Lumia 900 was before I started my format for the camera deep dives, but some of the samples I think still kind of compare. But yeah, it's been 9 years of me talking about smartphone cameras with a very similar format for how we judge camera performance. I'd like to at least put that feather in my hat that I think the end of next year will be a decade of smartphone camera reviewing. And I don't know many people that have kind of kept up with that kind of workflow. All right. Now let's get into some gadget block commentary. One of the videos we absolutely needed to talk about in how we frame discussion and why we give, the massive, most popular phones this kind of outrage attention. I wanted to briefly, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but I wanted to bring up the back and forth on a tech outrage topic, kind of highlighted by Zach over at Jerry Rig Everything. So Zach put out his teardown on the Galaxy Note 20, and it kicked off a firestorm of sort of outrage commentary. When Zach was tearing down his Note 20, he found that there was a different cooling solution. There was a graphite pad in his Note 20 as opposed to the copper vapor chamber that Samsung has advertised in the past for improving thermal performance. This created sort of a chain reaction of I've got to pull up. I forgot to pull up one extra link here. This created sort of a chain reaction in other tech blogs, especially really high profile ones, just sort of linking back to this commentary where Zach very clearly said, I don't feel that this is adequate. That's not a direct quote, but over the course of this video, talking about how Samsung is dropping the ball on these different variants of cooling solutions. And if you followed my podcast at all, I have a real hard time with unverified claims. Zach's channel is popular for a very specific kind of commentary, and a lot of that is hinged on gadget destruction, right? His teardowns are not analytical. They're sort of ASMR scraping, twisting, prying, and the phone kind of comes out looking like it's been wrecked. Where I appreciate, if I'm looking for a teardown, I'm looking for a repair guide. I'm looking for something like Louis Rossmann or iFixit, where, really clean staged photos and beautiful soft lighting of every single little mini component on the phone to verify what's inside, and the expectation that this wasn't just like a brutally wrecked gadget that can be reassembled and probably used again. So let me see if I can pull up. So this was the article that I quoted when I was sort of replying to the initial controversy. iFixit came out with a response following Zach's teardown. Why Samsung built competing cooling systems inside the Note 20 and why it's probably fine. And I really appreciated the fact that they had some tough words for Tom's Guide and The Verge. Trying to say like, oh, well, we don't know what's going on in the phone, but that's probably why this phone runs so hot. And that bothers me. It bothers me because these are outlets that don't really do performance testing. For all of Zach's knowledge in tearing phones apart, he's not a resource I would turn to for the actual commentary on how does cooling hardware affect the performance of this gadget. Like, I know I'm kind of splitting hairs here, but you go to Zach's channel to see a phone ripped apart and scratched and a lighter held to the screen, which I've never understood. You don't go to Zach's channel for an informed commentary on performance differences based on that hardware. So when Zach comes out and says, this is inadequate cooling, there's going to be a performance hit here, I don't think this was a good idea, it becomes a buyer beware. But it's not backed up by a consistent track record of verifying that claim. He's commenting on graphite here, but outside of just casual inferences on heat pipes versus vapor chambers versus active cooling products, he's not responsible for generating that kind of performance testing. And so then that gets picked up by The Verge. And like, again, whatever your feelings on The Verge might be, I don't trust them to dig deeper into a phone than this sort of industry accepted idea of the average consumer registered trademark, copyright, whatever. And I don't believe an average consumer exists. There is no average consumer. There are only people with different needs and wants when they pick up a gadget, and those needs and wants need to be met, and they need to be met at a certain price tier. So Zach went back and he examined let me take a drink of water here real quick. And he examined some of the differences. So he got himself a Note 20 with copper cooling, and he got himself a Note 20 with graphite cooling. And he produced this video. But he also then kind of moved the goalposts on what created the outrage. So by the end of this video, we're back on track. The conversation on the Note 20 never should have strayed from the version of the Note 20 that we're going to get in the United States and in a couple markets internationally, which is running a Qualcomm processor, the Snapdragon 865 Plus. And then for most of the rest of the regions of the world, they're going to get a version of the Note 20, which is using a slightly older Exynos as compared to the slightly newer and more powerful Qualcomm. The Exynos, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm trying to keep up with drinking water here so my voice doesn't totally fail. Over this last year, we've been talking about Samsung has different processors for different regions, and one processor is more powerful and more power efficient than the other. And yet Samsung roughly charges the same for one product which doesn't perform as well. So by the end of this video, Zach is back talking about that. That's what we need to focus on. That's the real story of the Galaxy Note 20. But we got hyped up on other differences because of his assertion that graphite was inferior. Samsung is skimping. They're cheating their customers. We've been on copper. We should be doing copper. So he does a test here where he's swapping the cooling, and it doesn't really seem to make any difference on these two phones, which phone has graphite cooling and which phone has copper cooling. But he frames this video in a way where he's trying to make it sound like it was always just I was upset about the Exynos. And he never just comes out and says like, hey, I made a guess about this graphite and I was totally wrong. Whether or not your phone has graphite cooling, a heat pipe, vapor chamber, whatever, doesn't really seem to make that substantial a difference. His test verifies that, at least kind of gives us a more of a data point that we can look at, whether or not we appreciate his method of performance testing versus something else. I'll leave that up to other people who do speed tests, and Gary from Gary Explains could probably weigh in on that too. But at no point in that video does he ever address, yeah, I made this huge claim about graphite, which was incorrect. Sorry about wrecking that news cycle. I guess we can get back to the real story, which is the difference about the differences between these two processors. So that's why I feel it's important to bring this up. Zach has 6 million subscribers. When Zach is focused and is knowledgeable and is delivering a message, when we're talking about something like Exynos versus Snapdragon, that is a huge benefit to the community. But when his platform spreads a bad idea, how do we undo that damage? Because he didn't really take the opportunity to clarify. His follow-up video is still a Samsung needs to explain this breakdown on Exynos versus Qualcomm. That's not why we were upset about the Note 20. We were upset because we thought Samsung was using an inferior cooling technology. And that turned out to be an inaccurate assessment of the Note 20. We should be able to say, yep, totally didn't get that one right. Some of my favorite videos, there's one that I love when I was still at Pocket Now. Some of my absolute favorite videos are where I come up with a hypothesis based on the data that I have available, and then when I test my hypothesis, it's totally wrong. And I did that with the iPhone 7. So when the iPhone lost the headphone jack, I pulled out the dongle and I measured, and wow, this dongle doesn't perform as well as the built-in headphone jack on the iPhone 6S. I believe this is just a pass-through dongle. I published a video. I mean, we ran with it. Pocket Now. I have data. This data supports the idea that Apple is using an inferior connection, and it's because it's so small, it's likely just a pass-through dongle with some of the lightning connector pins. And that's why we don't see headphone performance as good on the iPhone 7 as we see on the iPhone 6S. And I was totally wrong. And that was a fun follow-up video to put it out there to say, oh no, this is actually impressive engineering that Apple fit a DAC into this tiny little lightning connector, but it's not as good as it was when we had headphone jacks built into our phones. That's what we need to do when we, as content creators, as reviewers, as the knowledgeable people who have access to these products, make a mistake. So that's where we take this opportunity to say, graphite appears to be a perfectly fine solution for thermal safeguarding a smartphone. You heard it here, folks. Antoine Davis on Facebook. That's a good question. How to undo damage in a news cycle. We can't. Again, Zach has 6 million subscribers. I have 120 people watching this live. There's no commenting or messaging that's going to undo sort of the initial assessment of someone like Zach saying thermite is inferior. Graphite is inferior. And then that story being run with by outlets like The Verge. Verge can print a retraction, but the damage has already been done. And now we've got to see, additional commentators really test the performance in ways that will make sense to consumers. Simon says, Hypno, I do. We've already seen the thermite version of the Galaxy Note. I don't think any of us want to return to those days. Simon says, Hypno. So, Note 20, that's the gig. But that's also why I keep pointing to, if we really want to be knowledgeable, not just have knee-jerk reactions, or if we just want to, get our feelings worked up. I want to be outraged by this, and I'm going to share it on Twitter because the headline is outrageous. Find those outlets that really do this stuff. Gary Explains, running Speed Test G, has been showing us a consistent platform for, I think, a more reasonable type of performance testing than a lot of the speed runs that you see on YouTube. I'll keep pointing it back. If you're really nerdy into this stuff, you need to be on iFixit on the regular. These teardown guides and repair guides, and they're so insightful, and they're pretty funny. You'll go through and they'll talk about their experiences trying to pry a battery out of a phone that's been glued in place. And the little witty comments that they put in their teardown step-by-step guides are funny. I mean, not funny like if you showed your great aunt Ida, a teardown video of a phone. She's not going to care. But if we supposedly are geeky and into this stuff, iFixit is really funny. It's good stuff. So moving right along, I think we should probably talk. Oh, where do I have it? Do I have mine on the tape? Do I put it somewhere dumb? It's right here. So another example, something that I kind of ran into over this last week was the commentary on LG Velvet. Who wants to talk about the Velvet? Yeah. Woo! So Velvet got a major announcement. I shared it on Twitter and on YouTube on my little sort of community page. But I mean, again, I really wish I could play this stuff, knowing that YouTube's going to kind of flip out about, you know, running video during the live stream. But Ask Dez from T-Mobile, they put together a hilarious unboxing video for the LG Velvet using nearly Mandalorian style technology. So it's this spoof on Dez going into this cavern, sort of Raiders of the Lost Ark style, and he picks up the Velvet and he puts a box down in place, and the boulder comes crashing after him. And it's the production value is insanely high. I mean, like, scary, insanely high. And apparently, they were using similar technologies to how they shot Mandalorian to produce that over-the-top unboxing video. Highly recommend checking it out because it's really good. It's not just like green screen. The way it plays with light, he looks like he's really in that environment. Everything that I loved about Mandalorian in a Velvet unboxing video. And I hate unboxing videos, but if you're going to do them, do them. Do them big. I think there are only two ways to do an unboxing video. The only time I've really enjoyed an unboxing is it's from someone who really bought it to use it and was excited about it. Or someone going way crazy over the top like Dez doing something ridiculous. So there had to be nerd rage controversy though. And this story spread faster than the correction seemed to fix. When you pulled up the Velvet on T-Mobile's site, actually, you know what? While we're doing this live, let me see if I can pull up Velvet on T-Mobile. Let's see if I can find their product page. Oh, it doesn't have it here. Give me one more second. I'm gonna see if I can find the T-Mobile. Let me just go to T-Mobile. Boop, boop, boop. Do, do, do. On hold music. So when they published their Velvet announcement, it's showing like, hey, we're going to get the Velvet. No, it's not on their main page. Someone in one of the live chats, link me a Velvet specs page because T-Mobile, I think, still has it wrong. Note. Yeah, it's not even on their main page. Come on. I know. LG. Whatever. Okay. When T-Mobile first published their Velvet breakdown, they included the little tidbit that they were not going to be using a Qualcomm processor, that this was going to be a MediaTek. And on their specs page, it was listed as a MediaTek Dimensity 800. Apologies for those of you who are not total specs nerds, but MediaTek has long had a reputation for being the not as good processor manufacturer when compared to Qualcomm. So that got a lot of people kind of fired up. T-Mobile's going to charge $588 for the Velvet. So it's $12 cheaper than the Qualcomm-powered, Snapdragon-powered Velvet. I have the South Korean version, which has the 765 Qualcomm processor. And I saw like some immediate knee-jerk reaction commentary. You know, headlines like, oh, Velvet's coming to T-Mobile with an interesting chipset. I saw some smaller YouTubers putting out like buyer beware videos. And you're like, wow, this is kind of crazy. Now, minutes after the T-Mobile page went live, we got an update from MediaTek. They put out their own press release. Dimensity 5G chipset unveiled for first MediaTek-powered 5G smartphone in the United States. Now, how sad is it that MediaTek, which doesn't get a ton of SEO traffic on their own, didn't even list LG in their press release title, right? Like, they didn't think they'd get any kind of SEO bump by including LG in their commentary. Like, how sad is that? Mr. Mobile doesn't do an LG Velvet video. He makes a video about dual screen phones. That's like the confidence in LG as as any type of search topic is that low that a press release from MediaTek doesn't even include them in the secondary line. MediaTek's Dimensity 1000C delivers premium 5G experiences, advanced AI capabilities, enhanced display features, and ultra-fast connectivity for some random company who shall be named later in the press release. From Surf Jesus, the Velvet arrives on T-Mobile with a twist. It's hilarious. So anyway, I'm having conversations with people on Twitter. I mean, like some people who were really upset. Like, I guess LG will justify the poorer performing chipset because it's $12 cheaper. Buyer beware, buyer beware. So it turns out that the Velvet is going to use MediaTek's top-of-the-line processor. This is a chipset we haven't gotten here in the United States, but it's the most powerful thing that MediaTek makes. And from what we can see, looking up different benchmarks, again, we don't want to put a lot of faith in benchmarks, but they're a starting point for us to have a comparative conversation on a phone that I can't put in my hands just yet. This chip performs roughly in the same ballpark as last year's top-of-the-line Qualcomm. So to me, it seems like MediaTek is roughly a generation behind Qualcomm. But that's critical. If you saw my Buy the Benchmarks video for the Velvet, the Snapdragon 765 in this phone is a little less powerful than a Snapdragon 845 from Qualcomm. So this phone right here is just a little bit more than 2 generations behind in terms of power. So there's going to be a flavor of this phone going to T-Mobile, which is cheaper than the other versions of the Velvet and will be nearly as powerful as a top-of-the-line premium phone from last year. And that becomes a much more interesting story than just, oh, LG fails again, and who would use a MediaTek, and how are they gonna justify using a different processor? I guess because it's $12 cheaper. Velvet becomes a very interesting conversation when it's last year powerful, akin to a phone like the first gen Galaxy Z Flip, the Microsoft Surface Duo, or any other phone that's sporting a top-of-the-line but slightly older processor. I guarantee you that people in the consumer target market for a Velvet are nowhere near maxing out the processing capabilities of last year's top-of-the-line chipset. MediaTek is in very good territory here if they're offering that chip at a significantly lower cost than what Qualcomm can offer a similarly performing chip. We're starting to see kind of like an AMD versus Intel fight here. It's not just performance. Because if you want just performance, you got to pay a lot more. But if you want performance to price, this MediaTek looks like it's going to deliver better. And that's what's crazy exciting. But again, we had to undo this sort of knee-jerk reactionary damage to the outrage of, consumers are going to get fleeced if they buy the, why is it different, and dual screens, and oh, this is terrible. And now I got to tweet 20 times more to undo. Like, what's going on? It's not a great look, and we should be able to do better than that. BW1, absolutely on point. We've got too many in the industry who bash a chipset if it isn't the latest and greatest and isn't the top-of-the-line Qualcomm or Apple. Chipsets don't suddenly die. We should be looking to make more devices with older but capable chipsets at a better price overall for phones. And it's actually one of the things, like, I think Apple, it's going to make me vomit a little in my mouth to say this. But Apple might have a better take on this because they don't make a range of processors. They might now that they're doing Apple Silicon. But for iPhones and iPads, they make subtle variants of each generation, but then it's just that generation of chip. A9, A10, A11, A12, A13, there's going to be an A14. They don't make A12 plus, A12 minus, A12 light. They don't make stratifications of processors. If you want a cheaper iPhone, you just buy an iPhone with an older processor, and that's less powerful than a current iPhone. I think it's a little bit trickier looking at Qualcomm's strategy where there's the 400 series, the 600 series, the 700 series, the 800 series, and then they're coming out with some custom chipsets for laptops and ultra portables and desktop computers, and like it's too much. And I think we would do well with kind of scaling back. Do you have a 660? Is that like a 710 or is that more like a 730? Is the 730 like the 765? But what about the 5G modem? That's now going to the 460, but are we getting a 460 or 465? And then we got a new phone out with the 855 and that supported 5G, but this phone won't have it because to get the 5G modem, you really want to get the 865. Who cares? Like I'm the one out here like rendering 4K video from phones. And I'll tell you point blank, if you're on a Snapdragon 845 from 2 years ago, you still have plenty of processing power. You're doing fine. So let's settle down a bit with whether or not someone's getting fleeced on a $600 5G phone and instead look at what does the product really do? Because if we actually assess what it does, I think we'll find we're probably getting a reasonable price to performance ratio. From Pakostin, Apple does segmentation on a smaller scale. For now, they're limited to similar sized phones and iPads. But what I mean is that they don't have a yearly stratification of tiers of processors at different prices. There is no 2020 version of a $200 phone entry-level chipset. They don't do that. They do, you want an iPhone SE, we'll make the phone cheaper, but we'll still give you the more expensive processor. You still get the Apple A13, but the phone is going to be the same recycled form factor we've been using for years. That's how they manage their costs. And I think that's more effective for Apple having their singular product focus. And I hope that that's something we see from other companies like Google. If Google makes their own processors for a future Pixel, keep it simple. Current year, most powerful, lesser model from last year, and then recycle from there. Instead of like, well, we need a mid-range chipset and we need an entry-level chipset and we need a high-end chipset and we need a premium chipset. Like, don't do all that. Just one, and then when it gets older, it's the less powerful version and you get that at a lower cost. And I think that's better. Matt Tyler, we knew it would happen. Juan is an Apple shill. Oh. Again, it's like I have a video coming out on the iPhone XS, and it's not just, oh, this is why I hate Apple. This is why I was disappointed with the iPhone XS. But it really rekindled. Using the iPhone XS made me realize how much I loved the original iPhone SE and how good a buy the combination of a current iPhone SE with an Apple Watch is. I would much rather rock Apple Watch plus iPhone SE than any premium priced iPhone all by itself. And I think that's where we can have some really interesting conversations about price performance. You know, again, I feel like I can do way more out and about with SE and Apple Watch than I can with an expensive iPhone all by itself. And Ali, first time on the live stream. Hello, sir. Hello, Ali. So, and actually, Pakostin makes a good point here. Regardless, neither Snapdragon or MediaTek will get open source drivers, so limited appeal to grab Qualcomm these days. I think someone shopping a Velvet is probably not going to be overly affected by custom drivers or GPU drivers or upgrades for stuff like that. We'll have to see. I don't know. Maybe my grandmother might come to me one day and be like, Mijo, why can't I upgrade the drivers on this? And I'll be like, I don't know. why did you start speaking with such a strange East Coast accent? And she'd be like, huh? And I'm like, that's not how my grandmother talks at all. And Tana So Lit, how are you, bro? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Everyone say hey to Tana. That's it's good times. I love seeing you in my stream, man. Sentinel 909, expensive iPhones recently have less and less sense as far as price to benefit ratio. I'm trying to be measured here. I believe there is an incredible conversation to be had around ultra premium phones, and I want to see more of them. I want to see phones that give us, crazy capabilities and blow away performance metrics and standards. And I'm not bothered by phones that cost $1,400, $1,800, $2,000. But when I see a device like that, I really want it to be framed in a conversation around displacing other gadget purchases. And that to me has become the threshold. That's become the benchmark. I'm excited about a Surface Duo, not because of the camera and not because of the antiquated Snapdragon 855. I'm interested because that genuinely looks like a phone that will make me pick up a laptop less. I am so into dual screen because there are now so many interactions that I have on my V60 and like even on my Velvet, which is a lesser powerful phone, that prevent me from having to open another computer to finish that experience or to finish that task. And I'm sure there will be people in line for phones like Z Folds that have similar feelings about this prevents me from needing to pick up a tablet, or this allows me to travel without bringing along a clunky laptop. So when I look at a Velvet, when I look at a V60, when I look at a Duo, those are devices that could potentially allow me to get a high degree of my normal work here done without traveling with a more expensive camera and a laptop and editing gear. I should be able to just leave the house and still kind of do everything that I would have done before. And if you tell me that that phone costs $1,400, then I'm excited, because that $1,400 phone allows me to keep my $2,000 laptop and my $1,000 camera with my $600 lens at home. So that's what I want. And that's what I feel like the conversation is lacking. Because right now we take these $1,400 phones and then we use them in the same way that we would use a Pixel, like a Pixel 3a. Well, I mean, I'm doing the same things on this. Like, I pulled up WhatsApp and, oh, look, and here's my Facebook Messenger. I have two screens. Let me put a restaurant menu on one screen and I'll check on Twitter on the other screen. Oh, I mean, why would you spend more money to do that? I don't understand. No, that's not the conversation. The conversation is like, I'm doing recording and writing and advanced social media, like having multiple chats open, live streaming, everything. And I can still pop out a Bluetooth keyboard and write in Microsoft Word or edit my spreadsheet, my Gadget Diary Excel spreadsheet. That's what we're talking about. I didn't have to come here to my workstation during the middle of a heat wave where power might fail at any time. I didn't have to open up a laptop. I legitimately got it done from this with a 5G data connection and a battery that genuinely lasts 2 days on moderately high use. That's what we want. Let me take another sip here. So I've got a couple other quickie stories, but I feel like we should probably just get to the meat and potatoes. We had TCL reps on stream. I want to say it was about 2 months ago, talking about the TCL 10 Pro and some of their experiments with folding phones. We're in the middle of IFA, even though IFA isn't really IFA. It's kind of like a social distancing IFA. But they put out a really interesting press release on a new form of digital ink or e-paper. So they've got a new, again, it's reflective light. They're calling it NXT paper. I'm going to have the link to Engadget in the show notes. I want people to check this out because I feel like this is another screen technology that could use a little refresh. Big fan of old like smartwatches like the Pebble. And there are so many situations where a passive display, not something shining light into your eyeballs, would be kind of a benefit. So some cool things. TCL, they don't always make products out of their experiments, but hopefully this is a technology that ends up in a future Kindle or an Amazon Fire tablet, or I mean, even some type of more robust e-reader with tablet functionality could be really cool. Let me get this out of the way here. Who was catching GPU news? I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because I'm not Gamers Nexus. I spent way too much time going through benchmark videos on the new GPUs, and I'm into performance testing, and I like running some benchmarks myself. I am not. I'm not equipped to tackle like the nerdcore version of a GPU benchmark. Real quick, I love this comment from Tech Love and Mama. As a mother of 4 busy boys and who handles all things that deal with the household, and an all-in-one device has been a savior to me. One reason I go for a Note series device for years, and I think that's critical to the conversation. A Note 20 is a terrible buy if your needs are somewhere around Pixel 4a, right? You could spend $1,000 more, but not get $1,000 more use. But we're going through this right now. You know, my wife is working from home. My daughter is schooling from home. It's not really homeschooling, it's remote schooling. We're moving computers around, laptops around. She can't really use her tablet to do this app, so we have to use her Chromebook for that. And occasionally we just need to pop out like my old Razer. It's overpowerful for what she needs, and it needs to be plugged in because the battery life is garbage, but sometimes that's the thing we need to do, and it's got a touchscreen so she can still use it. I can't count on what gadget or glowing rectangle I might use, but my V60 is off limits. Like, this is mine. At any given time, I can pull out a stylus, jot some notes. I can pull out a Bluetooth keyboard, set it up at the dining room table, set it up at her little workstation, set it up next to the art project table that my daughter uses, or just use it here in the Gadget Lab if I want to get away from my workstation. That's what we're talking about. So, let me get this out of the way here. So back to NVIDIA. They took the wraps off the GeForce RTX 3080, and it looks like a monster. It looks like a beast. This is a crazy jump in compute processing power. I'm doing fine. I have a 2080 Ti. I feel like, because I've had it for a while. It's not like I bought a 2080 Ti last week and then this came out and I spent full price. But as is our reality of gadgeting, the new one is always going to be more powerful, and it's foolish that you bought last year's top of the line product because this year's product is so much better. So RTX 3080, I'm sorry, I'm bouncing all around here. RTX 3080 is going to be coming in at $700, and we're reasonably confident that this is going to be outperforming 2080 Ti's. So a GPU that when it was brand new was like a $1,200 or $1,300, $1,400 GPU. Then we went through that crazy time period of like crypto mining, and I couldn't get a 1080, and then the 20 series came out, and then ray tracing. So everything about this is kind of obscene power. And then coming down, the Founders Edition is going to be roughly $700. I would imagine that like the other manufacturers, like an Asus or an Aorus version of the 3080, will be more expensive than $700. So, Dave Burns, you nerd. Dave Burns is saying 3090 for him. There will be a version of the 3090. What is it? $1,400. The 3090 is not gonna replace what I had with like a 2080 Ti. It's now sort of a bridge graphics card to their professional line. You know, they had a line of cards called the Titan, and that's what's gonna take us over the top. But we're looking at, I think this is our first generation of crazy over the top high resolution graphics support. But it's happening at a really weird time. So think about like how long we've been floating around 1080p gaming, right? From the PlayStation 3 to the PlayStation 4, console gaming, it was kind of a struggle. Like 1080p, 30 frames per second. Developers eventually got a bit more juice, you know, like learned how to develop for these consoles, pushed the capabilities of them to the point where we got like Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, just an absolutely stunning game from a console. And next generation consoles, we're talking about like 4K gaming at 60 frames per second. And maybe that's true, or maybe some benchmarks are a little off, or maybe the Microsoft is going to be more powerful than the Sony. At the same time, I think we're creating kind of an artificial arms race with things like 8K TVs. You know, we don't have 8K content. My phone can shoot 8K. I don't know if you really want to watch it. It's like the phone video app itself cannot play the 8K videos that the phone can generate. I don't think we're there yet. I think we can push pause on that 8K TV investment for at least another year. But one of the things that they're highlighting is, gameplay at 8K or 4K gaming at like 120 frames per second. You know, again, I feel like the frame rate matters more to more gamers than the absolute upper limit of how many dots this GPU can draw. And I think that's going to be tested pretty strongly. So we've had ray tracing. This is a lighting effect where light rays are traced in real time. That's a really oversimplified way to talk about ray tracing. But that's what's happening. It's much more realistic reflections, shadow detail, texture detail. I played, one of what was it, Youngblood, and the way that images would reflect on glass panels. Absolutely stunning. But we're talking about a very small component. It wasn't like the textures of the game got way better. The details in the game got way better. The shadow and lighting got better. But in playing Youngblood, one of the things that made a bigger difference was enabling smarter compression. And so this is where I'm going to be really interested to see how this next generation of graphics cards performs, because I have every expectation that consoles are going to start playing with this trick too. The name brand on this, what NVIDIA calls DLSS, is it uses smart AI algorithms to sort of cache a representation of a scene, and then it's actually rendering a much smaller version, but then expanding it to a higher resolution. It's sort of a really smart AI upscale, but retains all of the lighting information. And that's performing insanely well on medium spec graphics cards from last generation. This 20 series, like a 2060, can play with this compressed ray tracing experience with phenomenally high frame rates. So I think we're starting to encounter the divide. I think we're starting to see the split. There's always going to be a component of the absolute hardcore gamers that wants locally rendered top-tier graphics, just pushing the limits on resolution and frame rate as high as they can go. But I think we're going to increasingly see the Netflixification of gaming, where maybe I don't need the absolute highest resolution, but maybe instead I can compromise the true resolution, upscale it intelligently, and get much better lighting at way faster frame rates. And as soon as we start playing with that kind of compression, it really changes the conversation about why we have this ridiculously powerful co-computer in the box. You know, I am stupid excited about the potential gains for a 30 series GPU for things like video rendering. Like BW1 was talking about using something like this with DaVinci Resolve. I mean, let me tell you, DaVinci Resolve has been absolutely insane to use with a 2080 Ti. I don't game that hard on this workstation. Again, Tetris Effect in Microsoft Mixed Reality, not touching this GPU much. It's like, it's not that meaty. But when I fire up a video timeline and it's scrubbing 4K 60 frame per second video in real time, no drop in quality or in preview quality, I can throw layers and filters all on top of it. It still gets a little choppy with text. I need to find a better solution for text. But then rendering it is insanely fast. That workload makes sense for using a beast GPU. I'll be curious to see how consumers respond, because I think the 20 series is largely going to go down as a bit of a flop. Gamers Nexus brought this up. I have to give them credit for adding this to the conversation. But when we see all of these enormous benchmarks, these huge gains, what's going on in the world of gaming, it's worth looking at what people are really using. When we look at like the Steam survey, this is from August, looking at hardware and software, and we go down to video card description. Still, number one, it's been dropping a little bit, but it's still the top card is the GTX 1060. So this is a mid-range card, not last generation. It's not a 2060, it's a 1060. The second place card, the 1050 Ti. The third place card, the 1050 non-Ti. The Ti's are slightly better versions of the same card. The 1070, and we have to get down into the 1650 and the 1660 in, what is this, 5th and 6th place before we get two GPUs that are more current of this year, but they're kind of based on last year's generational architecture, and they don't have all the fancy ray tracing capabilities. And when you finally get down to a card that's more current with 2% of the GPU market for this survey, you get to a 2060. If I look down and I try and find where is my 2080 Ti, 2080 Ti is less than 1%. It's 0.9% of the overall community of people on GPUs. Gamers aren't overwhelmingly buying the highest of high-end desktop gear. Smarter combinations of components to match a certain gameplay style is always going to be better. And I feel like, with the 3080 and above, the 3080 and the 3090 announced this year, those are going to be tiny fragments of a niche collection of PC builders. And I think increasingly we're going to see a ton of activity around like a 3070 to a 3050. And that window of 3050 to 3070 is going to explode because of things like smarter compression. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what this can do for productivity, for content creation, for graphics manipulation. I mean, just like these GPUs have been amazing for rendering video, but that's not gaming. From Wee Brew Lover, it's either the 3070 or the 3080 for me. The 3090 is overkill and costs too much for what I want. I don't think the 3090 should be considered a real consumer card. It's basically a Titan. And again, it's like you might as well just cross over into professional grade GPUs that they use for movie effects. Like just go all the way. Donald Locino, you made me an LG fan since the G4. Always happy to chat a little LG. JGJ, LTT forums, the Linus Tech Tips forums are pretty good info for price to performance. Again, it's I've been digging a lot on these performance metrics and the benchmarkings and the bar graphs and the charts and the PowerPoint slides. It's been pretty crazy stuff. From Sabakli, actually the top gaming segment is used by a lot of professional users. I mean, that's what I mean. like what we see on Steam from the people what actually play the games, it's very uncommon to see HEDT, high-end desktop components in the stratosphere prices. We should not be surprised. The mid-range conversation is where most people live, at the peak of the bell curve. Once you go above that, I mean, people who are on 2080 Ti's like I am, I have to believe a good chunk of them are looking at mixed multimedia. So maybe they game and produce content, or maybe it's all just about production content. MBK98, you should buy one. I still got to work my credit card bill for my Microsoft Surface Duo coming in. It's going to be a little bit before I can drop another $1,000 on a GPU. And Gabaletta, I mean, my Gabaletta says my GTX 1080 still performs phenomenal for what I use it for. Absolutely. I had a 1080 Ti, and I sold it and flipped it to get the 2080 Ti. And the 2080 Ti has been phenomenal. But I don't know that I would have recommended other people do that. It was like I was really looking to get that nudge. I was doing a full PC rebuild anyway, but I was looking to get that extra little nudge. So I've got a Threadripper with a 2080 Ti. It's actually not a great box for gaming, the Threadripper that I've got. But it was all about video performance. If I were still on that old system, my 1080 would have been doing just fine. Like that was a monster card too. And I think that's why I said the 20 series is going to go down as a bit of a flop. It really, again, it kind of caught us in an in-between time. It was the first generation of ray tracing. We got a whole bunch of hype on this lighting effect. It took a long time for that to play out. It took a long time for ray tracing to be more of a benefit to gamers. Like I think we'd probably consider Control. If you haven't played Control, try and play it with ray tracing on some type of ray tracing system. Unfortunately, that means not playing it on a console, or a current gen, or technically last generation console. But it was the first game I really felt like, oh, ray tracing is contributing to the overall look and art direction of this game. This is a beautiful example of what this hardware can do. And my computer is just belching like a blast furnace to try and keep up with this gameplay. Okay, that's great. And then better compression is going to make it even better. So I think the 30 series will probably be a better overall generation of sales than the 20 series was. I think the 20 series just had to be our transition into ray tracing, and now the 30 series will probably show us where we can go from there. BW1, you have to shut off cores for Threadripper gaming. Yeah, but I'm lazy and I don't wanna. So I just deal with mediocre performance on this box. Again, it's like I spend so much time working here that I don't like making this also where I game. You know, it starts to just feel like work again. Ugh, I don't know. And Nick Feld, geez, Control is easily the best showing of RTX so far. I mean, it really is. I again, if you don't have ray tracing cards in your rig, please go harass a friend who does, because it is really pretty to experience that game with those kinds of lighting and reflection effects. So, I know it's one button on Ryzen Master, BW1. I don't want to push it. I'm good. And again, I'm sitting here most of the time to edit video, and then I'll forget, and like, oh, I don't want to have to reboot or change something or do something different. I don't know. So we'll have to see. Hopefully AMD comes up with something competitive. At this point, what I really hope AMD comes up with is a good competitor to the RTX 3060, which is expected to arrive later this year, a little closer to the holiday season. That's, I think, the strongest play for AMD. I'm not going to care if AMD comes out with a $1,400 card that can go toe-to-toe with the 3090. I think the smartest play is to reach the biggest group of potential consumers, deliver their version of a ray tracing supported graphics card, and really hit in that 3060 to 3070. And if they can do that, then I think we'll have for a more competitive GPU race this year. AMD's been doing so well with CPUs and fighting Intel. It'd be nice to see them pick up and give a little more competition to the GPU side of the conversation too. All right, one last story. We're gonna wrap this up. We're running a little long, but again, I borked the start of this podcast. Less so like an actual part of a specific gadget conversation, but one that I feel is gonna kind of getting blown up, and then also getting a bit sort of apologized for. There's a story that's kind of percolating about Apple and privacy. Now, in iOS 14, we've been seeing these early stories about the beta talking about Apple's new policy for advertisers and tracking on their smartphones, and how iOS 14 is going to make this relationship opt-in as opposed to opt-out. So if you work with an app and that app tracks your behavior and monetizes that behavior, when you first fire up that app on an iPhone, you're going to get a pop-up. So this is coming by way of TechCrunch. Apple won't force developers to let users opt out of tracking until next year. So Apple got a lot of positive buzz on this, what I'm showing on screen right now. You install a new app, you start to use it, and immediately you get one of these confirmation bubbles saying, do you wish to allow this app to track your behavior across apps and websites? Or would you like us to tell the app to not track your behavior? This is going to be a huge shot at many of the monetization mechanics for web traffic. If you're ahead of the curve, I hope you're using plugins or browser add-ons that already manage this kind of stuff for you. Like I'm a big fan of Firefox for some of their built-in tracking protection. And then also they've had some great add-ons like Facebook. The Facebook container is great. You get this little like line whenever a website tracks for Facebook, and you can say like, well, no, you don't get to track my behavior across the internet. If you want to watch what I do on Facebook, which I never use anymore, you can watch me there, but you can't watch me on every other website on the internet. So this is something we want as consumers. If we're going to say consumer behavior has a monetary value, then I feel like consumers should be a part of the discussion on how their behavior is being used to monetize. And this is something I'm very much looking forward to in iOS 14, so I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that Apple's going to be pumping the brakes on this. It makes sense. You kind of can't just pull the plug, right? You know, when iOS 14 was announced to when it's actually going to push to consumers, not in a beta, but as the actual phone operating system, is not a lot of time. So this is the statement from Apple. And again, this is reported on by TechCrunch. We believe technology should protect users' fundamental right to privacy, and that means giving users tools to understand which apps and websites may be sharing their data with other companies for advertising or advertising measurement purposes, as well as the tools to revoke permission for this tracking. When enabled, the system prompt will give users the ability to allow or reject that tracking on an app-by-app basis. We want to give developers the time they need to make the necessary changes, and as a result, the requirement to use this tracking permission will go into effect early next year. So I really want us to watch. I really want us to hold Apple to that. Early 2021. I don't want to see this go into play at the end of 2021 and then start saying, oh, Apple does it. They did it again. Look, they're doing right by consumers. We now have a target. And I say early 2021 is first quarter 2021. So by the end of the first quarter of 2021, I want to see this feature on iPhones. But again, this is a situation that Apple is having to address because of the way that they monetize. They're currently fighting Facebook on how the App Store it verifies or approves apps. They're fighting Epic in court over how Epic wants to have monetization styles that run afoul of Apple's terms of service. I mean, they're fighting multiple fronts for maintaining the most restrictive walled-off garden that they can make. So a change like this would be a radical change for the iOS app developer ecosystem. It's why, I mean, like, we haven't looked at better subscription options or upgrade options. Like maybe a paid upgrade for an app would be better for a developer, but Apple won't give them that. So instead, they have to resort to advertising or tracking user behavior and selling that data off. So it's tricky. This is complicated. I don't think anyone should be coming down too hard on Apple for this specific move, but we do want to see that they live up to what they're claiming that they're going to do. And I still feel it's a reasonable time frame. It bothered me that on the iPhone 11 Pro, they advertised all of these amazing camera features. We didn't really get them until about halfway through the first year of that phone's life. And you really only get the major feature on that first year. So we lost about a half of a year of Apple supporting that phone with brand new features from what they advertised you would get. So I don't want to see people buying the iPhone 12 on the promise that it will eventually allow you to better protect your user data against advertisers, and then that not really show up when they said it would in 2021. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up in the context of this conversation is because this entire podcast has been kind of focused on media literacy, dispelling advertising and marketing versus the reality of what they're promising, and then also playing the game of manipulating news cycles and ad metrics. Because the very same day that this story kind of broke, that Apple was pushing pause, they were pumping the brakes on giving consumers this type of data protection, they also hit the internet hard with a brand new commercial. And wouldn't you know it, the commercial is focused on privacy. Privacy, that's iPhone. So what do you think, in the whole grand scheme of a tech news cycle, which story do you think tracked and trended better? Apple putting their entire media marketing mega machine, one of the, like, again, a company that spends some of the most monies on advertising and marketing, or the story that they were going to remove one of the most appreciated consumer protection features from iOS 14 until they gave developers more time to, I don't know, maybe find ways around it or monetize in different ways. If you thought that this privacy commercial was shared and viewed and talked about more, I'd imagine that you would be correct. I don't think any of us would be overly surprised. So this is what I'm talking about. You wanna present your product in the most positive light you can. And if you're Microsoft and you're releasing the Surface Duo, you know all of the ways that utterly predictable tech influencers are going to criticize your product. You remove their ability to use those talking points. And it's brilliant. That's brilliant marketing. That's amazing PR. Let's say you're Apple, the most profitable tech company on the planet, approaching that $2 trillion cap. They had like the world's largest stock drop, and it barely registered as value. What is it? They lost like $180 billion in a single day. I don't know. It was something ridiculous. Again, single largest drop on a company stock, and it's still like insanely the most profitable company in the history of technology. So let's get out ahead of that story. Let's dominate the news cycle. We have to disclose that we're going to be changing up what we said consumers were going to expect on iOS 14, and that has an effect on privacy. So at Apple, we don't sell your user data, but we have plenty of apps in the App Store that will sell it for you. Well, we can't let that be the narrative. So instead, let's put out a funny commercial. It's a well-shot commercial. Apple's marketing is savvy and entertaining. It's a good commercial. But let's obfuscate what the real conversation is about consumer privacy and data tracking to give app developers a little more leeway on our platform, because we still profit from apps that do monetize traffic on our setup. Can't change search in Siri. Google pays us too much to let you not use Google. Other apps and services have these other microtransactions. Apple gets their cut. So Apple doesn't directly profit from this type of app and data manipulation, but they kind of do. Surf Jesus. Damage control. That's iPhone. Again, Sentinel 909. They're so nefarious. It's like the best con man in the world. You hate him, but can't help but admire him. So this is what I mean. It's not just one headline. It's not just one story. And it's not like I'm doing any kind of crazy investigative reporting. And I'm going to dig deeper and let me tell you the truth. Explained. Top 5 reasons. Clickbait. Shocked thumbnail. It's not about that. It's that we can see all these trends. What's good for a business, what's good for a corporation, what's good for a company. Oftentimes it's going to stand in the way of what we think might be fair play, or what might be reasonable for consumers, or what might be the expected experience that we should have. And that's why we should try. We should try to have these conversations and dig into this stuff just a little bit more. So folks, I want to say thank you to everyone who joined and everyone who jumped in, and apologies again if you've been listening to me ramble this whole time for starting this podcast with a busted mic. But next week, actually I got to check, because I think next week we're going to have to do the podcast a little early. So I'm going to go an hour earlier because I have an important meeting. Yeah, so next week we're going to be doing the podcast at 8 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, not 9 a.m. And I'll probably have to keep that show a little bit more efficient and a little bit more focused. But I wanted to spend some time. Labor Day, fun group of people. This was an amazing chat. A way for us to just kind of nerd out for a while, have these conversations. And I loved some of the back and forth. I didn't even get to comment on everything here. But the back and forth between people chatting with each other too. It's a community, and it's a vibrant conversation, which I think we should be working a little harder to protect. I don't like some of these trends, and I don't like how easily our systems can be manipulated. And when I get to have these chats with you fine folks out here in the audience, it kind of reinforces and it kind of helps refill some of my hope for the future, some of our hope for humanity, because we can be good tech neighbors, and that's increasingly what our family and friends are going to need. So next week, another episode, Monday morning tech chat show, a ton of videos coming out on obviously on YouTube, but you'll be able to catch everything on SomeGadgetGuy.com. I'm going to be posting everything there. Some really fun conversations coming up. I've got an interview I'm really hoping I can pull off, because I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. We'll see. There's a lot. And I mean, like, who knows if, maybe the weather is going to take another turn to the hot and I won't even be able to get electricity to run all this stuff. I'll just have to do it all from my phone. And I wonder if you'll even notice the difference. So, folks, happy Labor Day if you're of the United States persuasion. Those of you who caught this on the YouTubes, if you enjoyed these conversations, if you liked this kind of chat, for some of the reasons that we talked about, my concerns on this platform, on YouTube, and the only other recourse we have is to go to other mega media corporations like Amazon. But next week, it's going to be back on the Twitch, and I hope to see some familiar faces there too. I understand sometimes that can be frustrating, why we look at one video streaming platform versus another, or why some content creators might paywall their content. But the community is the community. It's the people. It's the folks you interact with. It's not the website you go to. So I hope you'll consider joining us over on twitch.tv/SomeGadgetGuy an hour earlier next week. All right, folks, I want you to have an amazing week. I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. And I'll catch you back here for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be well. Take care. Stuff is still stupid crazy out in the world. I don't want to see anyone get hurt. I don't want to see anyone get messed up. And if you're in a neighborhood like mine, stay cool and hydrate well. And I'll catch you back here next week. I love you all. Take care.